Hello friends, I hope you're enjoying the learning through this series of videos, especially the parallel and almost silent quiz that runs on the side of our discussion. And also the end lesson of each video, just to help you sometimes to revise some random concepts, but more to assist in expanding our horizons and learning at a slightly philosophical and macro level. So even if you wish to skip some part of the discussion, do watch it till the end by skipping, or much better option of increasing the speed. So, like all other videos of this series, let us take 10 more questions in this and learn little more of the system of governance in India. It will be beneficial if you keep your copy of the Constitution of India close for reference as we move along. I also recommend you please pause the video as the question is displayed, answer the question yourself, and only then proceed to listen. This will be useful. That's how we improve. And in this video, I have for you some paintings from the world, some of which we must recognize as an Indian citizen and some others as global citizens. Before we take the first question here, if you wish to take all these 500 questions in this series as a quiz or downloadable PDFs, then join the Telegram channel. The link is in the description. Alright, so let's take the first question, and that is: the office of the Chief Whip in the Parliament has been explicitly recognized in, and options are given: Constitution, the Act, rules, and it's not recognized at all. See, this is where a lot of confusion is, and that's why I saw very less number of you could get it right. The whip, okay, the whip is not really defined either in the Constitution or in any Act of Parliament or even the rules. Okay, it is indirectly referred, though, you should know this, in the Constitution of India. There is an indirect reference in the 10th schedule. Of course, that's where the anti-defection law comes in. I'm sure you know what is a chief whip, right? They are the designated leaders of the party whose directions have to be followed. Otherwise, anti-defection law may apply in terms of voting, etc. So, in 10th schedule, it states like this. It will say a person or authority authorized by the party on its behalf, right? So that is what we refer as whip, but whip as such is not recognized anywhere. However, there is an Act of Parliament which does recognize specifically the chief whip. Okay, so there is an Act of Parliament by the name the Leaders and Chief Whips of Recognized Parties and Groups in Parliament, Facilities Act 1998. It's not important to know the name. There is an Act of Leaders and Chief Whips of Recognized Parties. The Act merely uses the term Chief Whip. It uses the term Chief Whip in the name also and in the provisions, and the main provisions are regarding certain facilities to be provided to these leaders and Chief Whips. These are only for those parties which are referred as either a recognized party or a recognized group. So know that this is the same Act which also defines the criteria for being considered a recognized party or a recognized group. One reason why at times speakers and presiding officers, they do not recognize leader of opposition. Okay, as the law for leader of opposition, which we have referred earlier, remember the Salaries and Allowances of the Leader of Opposition Act, it requires the leader to be of a party, remember party, of a party in opposition to the government and has highest numerical strength and recognized by the presiding officer. So what is a recognized party? What is a recognized party becomes a question, and the criteria is in this Act that I have told you, right? So it for example very clearly defines that, you know, a recognized party, and if you see a recognized group. So in Lok Sabha and in Rajya Sabha, separately conditions are obviously provided, and the criteria is 10% and slightly less than 10%, they will be considered a group. So it should not be less than, that means it should be greater than or equal to 55 in Lok Sabha to become a recognized party. And in the Rajya Sabha, it should be greater than or equal to 25 seats. So if any party has that, they'll be a recognized party. Now, if they have slightly less, that means, you know, they have more than or equal to 30, but less than 55. That means up to 54. Then they are a recognized group. And similarly, in the case of Rajya Sabha, it should be at least 15. If you get less than 15, there is no recognition at all, right? But up to 24, you'll be called a recognized group. After 24 in Rajya Sabha, that is once you reach 25 or more, you'll be considered a recognized party. So this is where all these things are coming from. Anyway, so it is, the chief whip is recognized definitely in the Act of Parliament, the act that I told you. Yes, it does not define who will be a chief whip, it does not even talk about the powers of the chief whip, but it is definitely recognized there, but just the chief whip there. Anyway, so I hope you did recognize that painting there. You can read more at ease. The next question we have is, recently the Supreme Court has ruled in favor of permanent commission to women officers in the Indian Army. Okay, because not allowing a permanent commission to the women would violate certain basic, ideas and principles as mentioned in the Constitution of India. So I'm sure the immediate one you can realize is that it would be considered as a discrimination based on gender, and of course when that happens we know right to equality is affected, and of course because these are government employment, it will be not an equal opportunity for employment as well. Not a difficult question, I thought. So all of these are your in the correct answer. All of them should be marked. So let's move on, and a good number of you did get it right. So that's kind of obvious. You can derive even if you've not read the judgment. You are able to think through. Great. So the next question we have is this: 15th Finance Commission has recently been in the news, and we know it has been in the news. Who was the chairperson of the first Finance Commission? One of the earlier videos, I remember I did put the photograph also of K.C. Niyogi. And he was the first chairman. So I put his photograph also, I remember that. So if you have been following this, that's how a lot of other learning also comes up to us. Anyway, just to know, Santhanam, he was the chairman of the second Finance Commission. Mr. Chanda was of the third Finance Commission, and Raj Mannar was of the fourth Finance Commission. Not something that you have to really know, but while we are at it, if you know these terms and words, any day it can be useful for you. Alright, so we move on to the next question, and that is this. Which of the following statements is or are correct regarding the term of Lok Sabha? Okay, so it's talking about the term of Lok Sabha. We know the default term is 5 years, and the 5 years is from the date of their first meeting, right? So in this regard, if you have never read earlier, because I have not asked you perhaps, is Article 83. And this question actually revolves around clause 2. So just read Article 83 once for yourself. Please do that. I sincerely request you. So clause 2 will say that the House of the People, unless sooner dissolved, right? So that itself gives you a hint that it can be dissolved before that also. That's the first option here. Can be dissolved before the completion of 5-year period. So that itself gives you the hint. So it says that unless sooner dissolved, shall continue for a period of 5 years from the date appointed for its meeting. Then it also goes in the proviso, right? So in the proviso it says in the same article there that provided that during emergency the period may be extended by Parliament, right? So that there comes your second option here. It may be extended by Parliament by law for a period of maximum 1 year at a time, and it will not extend beyond 6 months after the proclamation is ceased to operate. So actually both of these should be correct. Otherwise, other than this also in Article 85, again clause 2, you will see that it very clearly says that the President may from time to time dissolve the House of People. So that also tells us that constitutionally it is definitely valid, and practically we know that yes, it does tend to have terms lesser than the 5-year period. Also during the emergency of 1975, election was due, and twice the term was extended, and the second time finally election was decided to take place in 1977. So we have precedence for this as well, that it has happened, the second one. Okay, so we move on to the next question, and that is this. The ministers of the Union shall hold office during the pleasure of, some options are given to us here, and nothing to discuss too much here. It's straightforward provision from Article 75 clause 2. Article 75 is the main article you should always have referred to once regarding the Council of Ministers. See, how I have emphasized that you should have read Article 124. That's about the judiciary, the Supreme Court, their terms, etc. Other provisions are also important, but 124 is the main one. Similarly, for Council of Ministers, you should definitely have read Article 75, right? So it will very clearly say that, it's an exact statement there that the minister shall hold office during the pleasure of President of India. President appoints, and we know President only can remove. Of course, pleasure of President does not mean a discretionary power of President. It will be done, the removal of the minister will be done on the advice of Council of Ministers, right? That's another thing. But we understand the spirit behind this. Usually I do expect much more better performance than what I see here, because these are, again, as I always say, fundamental questions, fundamental principles of governance in India. That's Lady Liberty. I'm sure you can connect many dots there, right? Even the Statue of Liberty and the whole, the French Republic's Marianne, the Lady Marianne. A lot of things are there. Anyway, spend time, understand it more. Next question we have, the 22nd Law Commission of India has been appointed recently, and yes, I am sure you saw that was in February 2020. The Gazette notification was issued because the 21st one, the term got over in 2018 itself. So we appointed it recently. It's the question I was asking, which of the following statements are correct in this regard? It is a statutory body. No, it is not a statutory body. It is a non-statutory body. There is no act of parliament or any provision of constitution also which deals with this. So it's the first option is wrong. Secondly, it has been appointed for a term of 5 years. No, you should know that the term of the Law Commission is 3 years, and that's kind of a standard thing that has been followed. Even the notification here is 3 years from the date of that notification, this time as well. And then it says one of its terms of reference is to repeal obsolete laws. Little application of mind, you'll realize how can a non-statutory body like a law commission, how can they repeal? Making a law, repealing a law is the work of the legislature. It's not the work of such kind of bodies, of course, if you see the terms of reference, and that's what I saw, some people got confused, that one of the headings, in fact the first heading itself, it will say, for example, it will say the following is the terms of reference, point number A, it will say repeal of obsolete laws. It doesn't mean it is saying you have to repeal. You have to read further, and it will say that they have to recommend such repeals to keep our statute books up to date. So some of the other things in the terms of reference include things like examining laws that affect the poor, and carrying out post audits, right? Post audits of the socio-economic legislations, examining laws that promote gender equality, right? Examining the impact of globalization on food security, unemployment, and also in general reforms for administration of justice. I will recommend that you just the headings of the work they do, because it has just been appointed recently and an exam is this year, next year. So it will be useful. It's not big, trust me. I never ask you to read things which are too big because then you should rely on some capsules. This is hardly 1.5 page of the terms of reference they have. And just the headlines I want you to, so that if somebody asks or you have to write a mains answer, you have some pointers with you, right? So things like this, which I've already written here for you. So anyway, please do that. And that's our, one of the Indian painters, Amrita Shergill, that's her self-portrait, almost more than 100 years ago now. So anyway, expecting better later. Next question we have is, recently All India Judicial Service has been in the news, often with reference to district judges and subordinate judiciary, to establish an AIGS. Essentially it's asking, how can we establish an All India Judicial Service? Well, let me tell you one thing. In this regard, I'm sure you know that Article 312 is very important. Government is getting ready to have All India Judicial Service by the year 2022. They have got this plan sorted. One of the 10 sectoral groups of secretaries, one of them is really working fast on this, and very swiftly now you will see these things happening. This government is actually very strong on the idea of reforms. You may like those reforms, not like those reforms, but they are going all guns blazing there. So you have to keep an eye on the administrative space a lot. I would recommend read the whole of Article 312. I know people have passively learned 312. Please read it. This also affects your career because you're all aspiring for All India services, or at least central services. So 312 you should be aware of. I would actually recommend that you prepare a short note on the pros and cons of the ideas of AIGS. 1 page maximum, right? Pros and cons. Read articles, prepare it yourself, not booklets that are available in the market. Use them, but make your own short essay ready. So if a question comes, you should not be caught blind. If this is a question that comes in exam, you should give the best answer possible, because this can be seen that it is happening, right? Okay, so in Article 312, see, first two are useless options for us. 368 is not at all involved there. And we know since All India service is actually a common service for the center and the state, and being federal, the state should have a say, and that's why a resolution is required to be passed. But to establish an AIJS, if a resolution is passed by Rajya Sabha under 312, that is not sufficient. Parliament still has to make the law, right? If a resolution is passed, it's just an authority to create that service. It will not establish the AIJS. You still need to make the law. So that's why the best answer for us will be option C in general also. Of course, the Parliament has to legislate. The condition for that legislation is that the resolution has to be passed by Rajya Sabha. But for AIJS actually, because the resolution is already there in place, the approval is given in the constitution, Parliament needs to make a law. But don't worry, the procedure you should be very clear. I recommend once again, please read Article 312. Trust me, it will help you. Alright, so we now go to the next question, and that is 348. Which of the following statements is or are correct regarding the recently submitted report of the 15th Finance Commission, FC15? The report makes recommendations for only the period of 2021, that's correct, and the report recommends reducing the state share from divisible pool compared to FC14 recommendations, that is also correct. See, originally FC15 was given a terms of reference, the TOR, for recommending for the 5-year period from 2020 to 2025. However, by the end of 2019, which was also close to the time of submission of the report of FC15, Jammu and Kashmir was bifurcated and made a union territory, which changes the whole dynamics of sharing between center and states. And that is why the Commission submitted an interim report of 2021. Okay, and another report will be submitted later this year, that is 2020, for the next 5 years. That means 2021 to 2026. Okay, so effectively they are going to recommend for 6 years. I have gone in more details of the Finance Commission's functioning and areas in which they recommend and how the grants are designed. Many people I see don't understand how grants work. So I have discussed all of that in question number 213, decently in depth. So you may like to listen to that. That is where I also told you that FC15 has reduced the share of the states from 42% by 1%, making it 41%. And why this was done? Because the Union Territory of Ladakh now is not to be considered in the share of states, as it is going to come out from the union budget, right? So that's again the idea why they reduced it by 1%. Otherwise, essentially, if you see conceptually, they are keeping it the same. Okay, so we move on to the next question, and that is which of the following statements is or are not correct? Okay, not correct as a difference between the powers of the President of India and that of the Governor of a state. President can commute a death sentence while the Governor cannot. A lot of people have made a mistake here, I see. See, commutation is just one of the mercy powers given to the President. Right? So while you can pardon, that is one power, you can also commute, you can grant a remission, you can grant a respite, you can grant a reprieve. There are a lot of powers. Many people get confused that Governor cannot pardon a death sentence. They mean somehow in their head, for the lack of clear understanding, or perhaps the books they read or teachers they have learned from, they're not able to understand this, that it means they cannot pardon, but rest of the powers are there. So Governor can commute a death sentence. What Governor cannot do is just one thing, that is to pardon. To pardon means to completely absolve the person of the crime as if they never committed the crime. Commutation would mean that they will reduce the nature of their sentence, that is from death, they will perhaps make it to life imprisonment, right? So that power even the Governor has. Okay, so never be confused. This is wrong. So this is actually a correct option for the question, because the question is asking which is not correct. This statement is not correct. Secondly, it says President can dissolve the state's legislative assembly by exercising powers under Article 356 of the Constitution, but the Governor cannot dissolve the assembly under any situation. Okay, the Governor cannot dissolve the assembly under any situation. Of course, president can dissolve. We know 356, etc. All those provisions. But governor cannot dissolve. That is also not correct, because governor can dissolve. Governor does dissolve. Like how we saw Lok Sabha can be dissolved before the end of 5 years. Even the governor can dissolve the assembly in case the will of the people is not resulting in the giving a mandate to the government. Then we'll have to go for new elections. So the governor can dissolve definitely. So when it says under any situation, this is not appropriate. Hence, this is also correct, wrong option, and hence a correct for this question. Okay, so both of these are actually not correct statements. Anyway, Vincent van Gogh's The Starry Night. And the last question we have is, which of the following statements regarding citizenship of India is or are correct? Okay, juristic persons are not citizens of India. Juristic persons. What is a juristic person? Juristic person means a person who is considered a person in law. They are not a natural person as such. For example, a company. Or nowadays, you know, even rivers or deities, you would have seen many cases. So they may be given certain rights, but they are not as at equation with the citizens of India. So many of the rights, etc., may not be available to them, may be available to them, but they are not citizens of India. Okay. A natural person is only a citizen of India. Understand that. Secondly, it says a citizen of India can simultaneously be a citizen of another country by obtaining the overseas citizenship India registration certificate, OCI certificate. No, absolutely incorrect. Blanket rule, understand, a citizen of India cannot be a citizen of two countries simultaneously. That is against the law, that is against the constitution. The constitution prohibits. As of today, there is no such provision where a citizen is allowed to have two citizenships. Okay, so OCI registration certificate is for people who were citizens of India, or their parents or grandparents were citizens or eligible for citizenship of India. Well, you can refer to exact rules, but the idea is that. And to know these specific rules, that isn't really necessary for, because that's too factual and that can change any day also. So for this exam, it's not, for this exam especially, it's not really that necessary, but you should know the concept, that why this OCI concept was created, right? Because for very long, many of the people of Indian origin were demanding that they should be given some more rights than just a foreigner in India. So, okay, like visa regulations were eased for them, some of the, the investments they make here, educational facilities, a lot of things have been done, but they are not citizens of India. They cannot vote, for example, they cannot hold any constitutional office. Anyway, so these were the 10 questions for this video, and see, I expected much better, much better. This is not, this is basics of your citizenship ideas, and citizenship is something which is so hot for the last 6 months now. So everything about citizenship, you should have your concepts, very solid concepts. Don't worry about current affairs and this and that. First thing is concepts. Prelims is always about concepts. I can't emphasize that anymore. So I'll leave you with a very interesting thing in the spirit of all these great paintings, and the more which I'll bring up in the next 10 slides also, because there's so many nice paintings I want you to be aware of, at least be able to recognize. Art and science coming together. Leonardo da Vinci is the Vitruvian Man. How an ideal human body should be, how it's all proportional, there's a ratio in everything. Read more, learn more. I'll see you soon with 10 more questions. Till then, study well. Thank you very much.